TAITAH for dodging when my niece and nephew tried to shove me into the pool, causing natural selection to handle the rest. Plus 10 updates. Okay, buckle up, because I have a story for you that's going to make your jaw hit the floor. Can you believe your own family would try to sabotage your life, nearly drown their kids in the process, and then demand you pay for their stupidity? Because that's exactly what happened when my sisters decided to push me to my absolute limit. And it all started with a barbecue that went horribly, horribly wrong. My parents, bless their hearts, decided to host one of those typical summer barbecues, and honestly, I wanted nothing to do with it. My two sisters, their husbands, and their kids? Hard pass. My wife and I are happily child-free, and let's just say we don't exactly see eye to eye on anything. But my mom can be relentless. She pressured my wife, and long story short, we went. When we arrived, the place was packed, probably 20 people. My sisters and their husbands were already well on their way to being completely wasted. Drunk, really. My mom was running ragged, trying to keep my nieces and nephews, little terror agents aged 7 to 11, somewhat under control. My dad, smart man, he'd strategically retreated to the pool's whirlpool section, a cooler of beers his only company. My wife and I made small talk, grabbed some food, and a frozen margarita, trying to be good guests. Of course, my sisters and their drunk brothers-in-law spent their time criticizing us for being late, not being in our swimsuits, and screwing up the vibe. Whatever that means. Just a typical suburban summer nightmare, right? About 45 minutes in, things escalated. Two of the kids, full of mischievous glee, ran at one of the neighbor guests who was standing by the pool and pushed her in. She stumbled, only got half wet, but her face? Pure fury. She didn't make a scene, though. Just marched over, grabbed her towel, dried off, and left. My sisters and their drunk husbands thought it was hilarious. They actually cheered. A bit later, I was standing a few feet from the pool, trying to have a normal conversation, when out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. 3 of the kids, running full tilt, straight for me. Obviously, I was next. Now, it's not exactly rocket science to outweed a bunch of little kids, so at the absolute last second, I just jumped out of their way. What happened next was like something out of a cartoon. All 3 of them, running at top speed, went straight into the pool. Full splash. Most of the other guests, including my wife and me, just burst out laughing. We couldn't help it. But their mothers, my already wasted sisters, absolutely freaked out. Turns out, 2 of the kids couldn't even swim. They were in swimsuits, sure, but apparently, they couldn't actually swim. Since I wasn't in swim gear myself, I just stepped back and let other people fish the screaming, flailing kids out. They were bawling like they'd lost a limb. That's when all hell truly broke loose. The 4 drunk parents started yelling at everyone, but mostly at me. They accused me of nearly letting their kids drown. And then, the kicker. 2 of the kids had been videoing the trick using their parents' iPhones, which were now at the bottom of the pool. One of my brothers-in-law lumbered into the pool, trying to retrieve the phones, but his BMI and BAC made that mission impossible. Nobody else volunteered, which, after my sister's constant complaints, was hardly surprising. I finally had enough. I told them straight up, it's your job to watch your kids. If anything had happened, it would have been your responsibility, not mine. Strong words were exchanged. My wife and I, done with the circus, left right after the other brother-in-law, still yelling at us, tripped and face-planted on the concrete. Seriously. And now? They were actually saying I should have just let those little brats knock me into the pool, let them have their fun, and ruin my phone. Was I the jerk here? Oh, and my dad. He never left the whirlpool. Not once. You won't believe the updates that followed. First, my parents told me the truth. My nieces and nephews are, in fact, all good swimmers. They use the pool all the time. The 7-year-old is a beginner, but loves the water. My sister just flat out lied so I would look bad. To be fair, the kids aren't allowed in the deep end, which is exactly where they fell in. It was the 2 10-year-olds and the 9-year-old who tried to push me. After my wife and I left that day, the party ended on a truly sour note. The drunk brother-in-law who face-planted had to go to urgent care for stitches. He was too wasted to drive, so my dad, still fuming, had to take him. Late that evening, my sister started a group text, spewing incredibly nasty crap. Their husbands jumped in too. My wife and I, without a second thought, blocked all 4 of them. My mom called me, visibly upset by their texts. My parents had been in the chat, and I didn't blame her for being angry. Because of those vile messages, my folks insisted my sisters and brothers-in-law come over the next day, without their kids, to get some things straight and lay down some ground rules, as my mom put it. The result was a contrite, though clearly unenthusiastic, apology from them, relayed through my mom's phone. I was so grateful my wife was with me. Her hand on my arm kept me from saying everything I really wanted to say. I just told them, thanks, and that we felt no need to discuss it further. Thinking things were settled, I unblocked them that evening. Big mistake. I immediately got a text from one of the brothers-in-law, demanding to know when I'd be paying for the $1,200 iPhones. My jaw hit the floor. Are you kidding me? I replied, never, took a screenshot, forwarded it to my parents with a note that we were officially done with this nonsense, and that we were going no contact with my sisters and their spouses. We wouldn't attend any more holidays or get-togethers if they were present. Then, I blocked them all again. For good. That's when crap really hit the fan. My dad, who had been surprisingly patient until now, called them and absolutely ripped them a new one. Among other things, he told them the grandkids were not welcome at his place indefinitely, which was huge because my mom regularly provides free babysitting. That rattled them. He also banned them from using the vacation house. And then came the mic drop. He told them that my wife and I actually own it, not him and mom. This completely freaked them out. Both sister families used that place a lot, even bringing friends for weekend getaways. This was totally out of character for my folks. They had clearly reached their limit. For context, I'd never wanted my sisters to know we owned it. We'd bought it for my parents, who always dreamed of a mountain place, and keeping the ownership quiet was just a way to avoid exactly this kind of drama. A couple of days later, my sisters and their husbands showed up at our place unannounced, trying to apologize in person. We were out to dinner. They left a note. One sister even called me at work, but it went straight to voicemail. We'd decided no contact was the best thing for the indefinite future, and we haven't interacted with them for weeks. Personally, I'm done. They can go pound sand. Just when I thought things couldn't get crazier, they did. What I thought was crap hitting the fan before. That was more like a gentle fart compared to what happened next. To understand this, you need some financial context. My folks were never good at saving. I've done their taxes for years, so I know their finances inside and out. House paid off, minimal debt, but not much saved for retirement beyond Social Security and my dad's solid pension. No hidden treasure chest. I even bought them their current car as a retirement gift. My sisters, however, were convinced our parents were dripping with money and would leave everything to them since I didn't need more. So, they never bothered saving either. Turns out, my oldest sister and her husband, the ones with 3 kids, had been living way beyond their means for a long time and were in deep financial straits. Maxed out credit cards, behind on car leases, one about to be repossessed. He used to brag about making 6 figures, but it was actually about half that. She confessed all this to Mom one Tuesday because they desperately needed a loan. And here's the mind-blowing part. For the last 3 years, instead of just using the vacation house, she'd been renting it out once a month or so and pocketing the cash. We're talking $2,000 plus for a weekend, at least $4,000 for a week. With her cut off from using the place, she'd already had to cancel a group. She was now worried they'd lose everything. My folks, of course, were in no position to give them a loan. And my other sister? She knew about the rentals and never said a word. I suspect she's done the same. I once went up there to drop off an ATV and found a family claiming to be staying there with my sister. I'd let it go then, thinking she'd loaned it to friends, but I'd always wondered. My folks, understandably stressed, Mom more than Dad. He was just plain pissed, told me all this. Dad felt utterly betrayed and embarrassed he couldn't help his daughter. He reiterated that as long as it was up to him, the girls wouldn't be using the vacation home anytime soon. They told me because they figured my sisters would come for me next. They were right. On Thursday, my sisters came to our place again, this time without their husbands, and waited outside the door until I got home. I had a choice. Fight with them in public, let them make a scene, or let them in. I let them in. My older sister spun a BS story, with the younger one backing her up, about why I needed to let them use the mountain place again immediately. They also accused me of being a crappy brother and demanded I step up and plan on paying for their kids' college tuition, because that's what family does. I let them pitch their entire, ridiculous story. Then, I called them out, Based on everything my folks had told me, things went sideways fast. Denial, crying, cursing, yelling, you name it. I swear my ears are still ringing 2 days later. I won't lie, I said some truly mean and crappy things, but nothing that wasn't true. They finally left after about an hour. After that, I took a shower and just laid down. When I got up, my wife was home, and her first words were that she'd had to block more phone numbers because my sisters were blowing up our phones from new ones. My folks messaged me asking me to call. I'm sure my sisters had told them some BS version of what happened, but I wasn't up to rehashing it yet. I'm usually an energetic person, but this drama had me beaten down. I had just enough energy that day to drive up to the vacation house and padlock the entrance gate shut. I'm the only one with a key. I figured that would be enough. They'd probably die trying to walk 400 yards uphill to get to the house anyway. My parents, completely fed up, told me they were done managing the vacation home. It sounded like my sisters had been pressing them relentlessly to get access again. Basically, my folks handed responsibility for the place over to me and told me it was my problem from here on out. Up until then, they'd tracked who used it and handled maintenance. I don't blame them for wanting out of the drama, but I was disappointed. The place was supposed to be theirs to enjoy, and now they wouldn't have access without me. It changed the whole dynamic. I immediately took steps to secure the property. I already locked the gate. Now it has a heavy-duty chain and the best lock I could find. I did a full reset on all the door keypads and created new codes. Security cameras were installed, a high-resolution one overlooking the valley. It cost way more than I thought, but the peace of mind was worth it. The installer even put up signs warning the place was monitored. I also installed a heavy-duty lockout for the water shutoff valve. If I lose those keys, I'm in trouble. Only my wife and I know about the water or have the keys. Last week, I got separate calls at my office from both brothers-in-law, trying to convince me to let them use the house like they always have. The older one had actually gone up with some friends for a guy's hangout, but couldn't get in because of my new gate lock. He was pissed and embarrassed. I'm sure he would have broken the lock if he could have. During his call, he bounced between pushy threats, "I'll rip that gate out of the goddamn ground," and playing the victim. He even admitted they'd been renting it out to a few friends, claimed they needed the money, and said I was ruining their business. He even suggested I should refund their guests' money. I told him where to shove that idea. I wish I'd recorded that call. The other brother-in-law just sounded like my sister was making him call. He didn't put up much of a fight when I told him not to plan on ever using the place again. In any case, I told both of them they couldn't use the place and not to ask again. At this point, I was seriously considering selling the vacation home. My wife and I wouldn't use it enough to justify keeping it, and it's not like there would be any family get-togethers there anytime soon. I mentioned selling it to my folks, and their response was pretty much, whatever. I'd more than double my money. It consists of 3 lots with gorgeous views at the end of a private road. But I decided to wait. Selling it now would be an emotional decision. My sisters and I weren't speaking, and I had no plans to initiate contact. I didn't know the status between them and my folks, and honestly, I didn't want to. On the upside, my wife and I had a nice dinner with my folks the other night, and no one brought up any of the drama. My mom did update us on the nieces and nephews. She's spending time with them at their homes now. A couple of people asked for an update, and oh, do I have one for you. I hired a local guy named David to manage the vacation home. He lives nearby, takes care of his parents, and manages several properties. He has access to my camera feeds and does a physical check every week or 2. He even sends photos of wildlife and sunsets, which almost makes me want to visit. He also has access to a camera feed from a house at the start of the private road that takes stills of every vehicle that passes. It costs $450 a month, and he handles basic maintenance. He's also friends with all the sheriff's deputies, which turns out to be very important. This arrangement gave me so much peace of mind. Then, the Friday after Thanksgiving, my brothers-in-law went to my vacation home. They used an angle grinder to cut through the chain on the driveway gate, damaging the gate in the process. They tried to get in through the front door, ruining the lock set and badly gouging the door. They finally got in through the utility room door and a locked internal door. They even broke into the barn, though I'm not sure why. When they went back out through the front door, they were met by sheriff's deputies and David. David gets notifications from the camera system when there's activity. He saw what was going on and called the sheriff's department immediately. According to David, The brothers-in-law tried to bluff their way out of it, but the deputies weren't buying it. Breaking into an empty house is a serious thing up there. It's usually drug addicts ransacking places. When my brothers-in-law were arrested, they freaked out, threatening to beat the hell out of me, and worse. Not smart to say that in front of cops. David and the sheriff's office tried calling my wife and me to see what we wanted to do, but we were spending the day with her parents and had left our phones in the car so we could be in vacation mode. So, they booked the brothers-in-law on everything, which is exactly what I would have asked them to do anyway. My brothers-in-law called their wives from jail, who, of course, freaked out. They called my parents, tried to call me, they're blocked, and tried to find a lawyer up there to arrange bail. Not easy in a rural area on a holiday weekend. My older sister has zero cash and maxed out credit cards, so if they made bail, my middle sister would have had to pay for both husbands. I know they were still in jail as of Saturday afternoon. We didn't check our phones until late Friday on the way home from my in-laws. There were a ton of calls and messages from my mom, dad, David, and the sheriff's department. Talk about ruining a great day. I was in such a good mood until I looked at my phone. My wife read through the texts and listened to the messages, reading them out to me. By the time we got home, I had some idea of what was going on. I tried to put my brain back into thinking mode, tried to get past my anger, and failed. Miserably. I called David and got the rundown on what had happened and how bad the damage was, which only made me angrier. I ended Friday by calling the sheriff's department and telling them there was no misunderstanding. My brothers-in-law had absolutely no right to be on my property, and I wanted to press charges. I didn't call my parents back. I barely slept. I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my parents. They were both pretty rattled, Mom in particular. My sisters had browbeaten them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I flat out refused. I told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney and was fully paid for whatever it would cost to fix everything, 100%. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which, of course, made me feel like crap. My dad suggested it was time for a complete reset, but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I hadn't gone up to the property yet. There was nothing I could do, and I knew I'd probably go nuts when I saw the damage in person. The photos were bad enough. I hope to go tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job isn't one I can just leave for non-emergencies. I'd left messages with 2 attorney friends, asking them to recommend the right lawyers to go after my sisters and brothers-in-law. I didn't know what exactly I could do, but I was hoping to get restraining orders. I had all the nasty texts they'd sent me that might help. I was also strongly considering suing them for the money they made renting the place. I didn't care about the cash, but it would help make them as miserable as possible. The gloves were off at this point. My brothers-in-law had no idea I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things, or that there were cameras. My parents knew but hadn't told them because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to stir up drama. There were even signs on the property stating it was monitored and that there was no trespassing. Also, my wife had completely had it. I didn't blame her. She'd been more than patient, but she'd reached her limit and wasn't shy about letting me know. She told me it was up to me how I dealt with this, but she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. My older brother-in-law likely wouldn't face repercussions at his job, but the middle one had a security clearance, so he definitely might. I hoped that would motivate him to pay for the damages immediately. David, the caretaker, was an ex-cop from a big city. He'd been shot on duty, quit, and moved to where his parents retired. He had PTSD, and his dog was a service animal. Law enforcement sticks together, so I guess that's how they became his friend group. I knew I didn't want to see or speak with these pricks for the rest of my life, even if it conflicted with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. I didn't think I'd be posting another update this soon, but a lot happened over the next few days. Thursday afternoon, a courier delivered an envelope to my office. Inside was a signed letter from both my brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. In the letter, they offered what I have to admit was a very sincere apology. They acknowledged breaking in, admitted it was wrong, and said the $5,000 was to pay for the damage, with a promise to pay more if it cost more than that. They also stated they would stay away from the vacation home unless my wife and I specifically invited them. They asked me to do what I could to get the charges dropped as soon as possible, as they could both lose their jobs, and they agreed to a restraining order or any other measures necessary to make that happen. There was more in the letter, all conciliatory, but that's the gist of it. To say this was a shock would be an understatement. It was a total 180 from their previous behavior. I had already made an appointment with an attorney to discuss suing them for the damage and to pursue a restraining order. I called him to explain what I'd just received, and he agreed to meet with me at the end of the day instead of next week. He advised me not to deposit the check. We met for about 2 hours. He recommended that my wife and I proceed with a settlement and mutual release agreement with all 4 of them, my sisters and their husbands. He explained that while we would almost certainly win a lawsuit against them, it could take 2 years or more, involve significant upfront legal fees, and there was a chance we might never see the money. He also noted that we could keep the $5,000 free and clear even if we didn't let them off the hook. He's now drafting the agreement, which will include what is essentially the civil equivalent of a restraining order. I had already asked my property manager, David, to prepare a bid for repairing the damage. After the meeting, I asked him to provide the most accurate estimate possible as soon as he could. I received it on Friday. He estimates it will cost around $4,000 to fix everything, most of which is for the front door. On Friday, my attorney contacted each of the brothers-in-law, explained what we were proposing, and advised them to get their own lawyers. Both of them agreed to the proposal. The middle brother-in-law told him they could afford to either pay for the damages or hire a lawyer, but not both, and they figured a lawyer wouldn't make much of a difference since they had no real defense for what they did. His main concern was whether the charges could be dropped. From what I can tell, they're willing to do anything or sign anything to make this go away. My attorney also reached out to the district attorney's office to discuss dismissing the charges. He got the name of the prosecutor and left a message but hadn't spoken to them yet. He believes the charges might be dismissed since the brothers-in-law are paying up and they have no prior offenses, but he's not a criminal lawyer, so it's not guaranteed. He also advised me to be prepared to drive up there Monday or Tuesday to tell the prosecutor in person that I wanted the charges dismissed. He further recommended that my wife and I remain completely no contact with my sisters and their husbands, especially over the next 6 months, and stressed the importance of strictly following the terms of the agreement for any future interactions. I suspect this sudden change of heart from the brothers-in-law was because they'd finally realized what was at stake for them: the legal fees, fines, and potentially their jobs. There was also the unlikely but possible risk of them serving up to 120 days in jail. One of them, as I mentioned before, has a security clearance that could be jeopardized. This seemed like their Hail Mary to preserve their normal lives. This wasn't a perfect resolution, but at least it addressed the legal and financial aspects of the mess I'd been dealing with for months. I doubted I'd ever have a civil relationship with any of them again, and that was fine. At this point, I just wanted to put this behind me, move on with my life, and never speak to them again. I was exhausted. My wife felt the same way. On a bit of a side note, receiving the written apology was strangely a significant moment for me. I never expected it, but it seemed to matter to me more than I thought it would. The money didn't feel particularly important right now, though I'd certainly accept it. I was also fairly certain that my middle sister and her husband provided the money. The cashier's check was from the credit union of the company he works for. Tuesday morning, I met with my attorney and went over the agreement. We changed a couple of minor things, and he sent it to my sisters and brothers-in-law. It included a requirement that they pay my attorney's fee, about $3,000. They weren't happy about that and tried to negotiate it away, but he told them they either accept it as is, or there would be no deal at all. In that case, we'd proceed with suing them for the money they made from renting out the place, wear and tear, repair costs from their break-in, emotional distress, lost income, attorney fees, and whatever else we could. He told them I would push hard with the DA's office to prosecute every charge. My attorney also told me that everyone was very cold and curt toward one another, but they managed to keep it together long enough to sign and left without making too big of a scene. I drove up to the vacation house early yesterday to check out the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was so senseless. I was so angry that I was ready to eat the cost of repairs and do everything I could to ruin their lives. I tried walking it off, but failed miserably. I ended up calling a good friend who stayed on the phone with me for over an hour, letting me vent. He eventually got me to focus on the bigger picture of putting this behind me and moving on with my life. Honestly, I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, but I settled down enough to get some food in me, and I felt better. After lunch, I went to the DA's office. I hadn't made an appointment, so I had to wait a while, but I eventually met with the assistant DA handling the case. The short version is that since I didn't want to prosecute and the brothers-in-law had already paid for the damages, they were willing to drop all the charges except trespassing, which will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The brothers-in-law will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judge sets. I was also told that if they fought the trespassing charge or caused any more trouble, things would go very poorly for them. It helped that they didn't resist arrest. If they had, none of the charges would have been dropped. I also stopped by the sheriff's office to thank them for responding so quickly and for everything they did. I wanted to thank the deputies personally, but only spoke with a dispatch person. I also tried to meet up with David, the property manager, but I couldn't get a hold of him. A couple of notes. The agreement includes a no-contact clause. Essentially, if any of them show up where my wife or I are, or vice versa, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. There will be no contact except through attorneys or other mutually agreed-upon third parties. They get to keep whatever they made from renting the vacation house. That's my big give, unless I face any tax consequences, which they will be responsible for. We release each other from all other liabilities up through the present. My wife and I will sign the agreement later today. After that, I won't be able to talk about most of this, but I'll still be able to talk around it, I think. This will likely be my final update regarding all this nonsense. Posting about all of this and reading people's thoughts and responses has been really helpful. It's probably been key to my handling this in a relatively healthy way. It turns out that, unsurprisingly, my oldest sister and brother-in-law filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. While I don't care about what happens to them financially, they've managed to drag my parents into their mess, which I'm not happy about. At the start of the year, my brother-in-law's oversized, customized Pride and Joy truck was repossessed. Pretty embarrassing for him, I'm sure, since it happened at work. This was their breaking point. Without the truck, they have to share a Kia my parents loaned them, and they can barely fit in it with their 3 kids. Financially, they're screwed. They owe at least $125,000, probably more, on high-interest credit cards, have zero equity in their house, and a couple of personal loans I'm pretty certain they got under false pretenses. They have loans on their jet skis, ATVs, and trailers, and owe a chunk of money from defaulting on the truck lease. They hadn't made any payments on their credit cards or loans in months, and were behind on their house payments. They got out of the lease on my sister's massive SUV late last year. They were upside down on it, so they had to come up with cash to get out. They also had to pay an attorney, the fine, and court costs for my brother-in-law's trespassing charge at the vacation house. On top of that, they owe my middle sister and her husband money for bail and their portion of the damages. As I've mentioned, my folks were never financial wizards, but they were generally responsible. They're retired, their home is paid off, and they live off Social Security and pensions. Altogether, they get more than they spend, with minimal savings, just an emergency fund. Turns out, my folks emptied that fund, cashed out their small IRA, around $20,000, and gave it to my sister. That allowed her to catch up on the house payment and cover the negative equity on her car lease. But now, literally every bit of savings my parents possessed is gone. Plus, my parents have been paying for their groceries for several months and continue to pay the insurance on the car they loaned my sister. According to my dad, my sister worked my mom for weeks to get her to fork over the money. They'd worked on both my folks at the same time for a while, but my dad flat out refused every time. Eventually, my mom caved. She was worried that my sister would have to move to a hovel in some backwater town, and that the kids would be barefoot and eating dirt. Dad's not happy about it, and to say there's some tension between them right now is an understatement, but they'll be fine. I was pretty disappointed when my parents told me all this, but I wasn't surprised. It sucks that they emptied out their savings to help, but I kind of get it. The way the bankruptcy laws are in our state, by getting caught up on the home loan, my sister should be able to keep the house. I tried hard not to say how I felt about this and my sister. I mostly succeeded. Really, I'm way more pissed about this than I should be. The worst part for me is that my sister and brother-in-law could now contact me and my wife without any real fear of repercussions. The only penalty the no-contact agreement has is that if they violate it, we can go after them for the money they made from renting out the vacation house and related damages. Since they filed for bankruptcy, that's no longer an impediment for them. I'm hoping they'll leave us alone, but who knows? My folks also told me that my middle sister and her husband have hit a rough spot, and that he's not currently living with her and the kids. Just a guess, but I imagine he's had it with the whole family dynamic that caused this nonsense. Not directly related, but on a brighter note, I've spent 2 weekends at the mountain house since the start of the year, once with my wife and once alone. Both times there was a lot of snow. It was incredibly beautiful and relaxing, very therapeutic. The place also has good internet service now, which is nice. Plus, knowing that I can count on David, the property manager, to keep the place in shape and ready for us to visit, and to help if we get snowed in eliminates most of the stress of owning it. My folks have used it a few times as well and get along great with David. It's almost the 1-year anniversary of the pool incident, and there's been one final, mind-blowing update. My folks worked through my mom giving my oldest sister her IRA and emergency fund, a total of $45,000. According to Dad, once Mom realized how much she'd been manipulated, she got as mad and upset as he'd ever seen her. I think she had a moment of clarity. She and Dad ended up calling my sisters on a 3-way call, and according to Dad, it went south pretty quickly. The sisters were gaslighting them, and Mom lost her cool, ripping into them hard. There were lots of tears, and eventually, both sisters hung up. Mom really just wanted both sisters to acknowledge that they'd put her and Dad in a risky financial situation. A typical blow-up, I guess, but not the kind of thing that usually happens in our family. The next morning, my dad called my older sister and told her he'd be picking up the car they loaned her. She tried to argue, but he told her it wasn't up for discussion. He got a neighbor friend to take him to her house as soon as he hung up and drove it home without talking to her. My sister called and went off on him, saying lots of nasty stuff, which of course hurt him, but at least they have the car back. Dad also told me something that left me utterly dumbfounded. For the last 17 years, they had been giving both sisters a grocery allowance of up to $500 per month. What the freaking F? I thought I had a pretty good handle on where their money was going, but clearly, I was wrong. This started back when I was in grad school and living at home. My sisters asked for the money because they thought it wasn't fair that I was living at home rent-free. And then it just never ended. In any case, my parents cut them off. Unsurprisingly, my sisters weren't happy about it. Who the hell gets an allowance from their parents when they're in their 40s? Because of all this, my folks and sisters quit talking for a while. I don't know if they've resolved everything, but they appear to be on speaking terms again, though my folks aren't having them or the kids over. I'm in don't ask mode. It's their business. My folks are using the vacation home fairly regularly. Currently, they're there for a 2-week stay and will probably make it 3. Unfortunately, my wife and I haven't spent any time there lately, other than me making a couple of day trips to check on it and drop off supplies. David, the property manager, is still taking good care of the place. Here's another kicker. My middle sister told my mom that the oldest sister had been making over $6,000 per month renting the house out, and that it had been going on for nearly 3 years. I'm pretty certain she didn't declare the income, so that's like grossing $8,000 to $9,000 per month. I will forever find that infuriating. My oldest sister and brother-in-law still have their house. My attorney checked up on their bankruptcy case, and the court converted it from Chapter 7 to Chapter 13, which I believe means they have to pay back a lot more of their debts. My middle sister and her husband are still separated. I don't know if my middle brother-in-law has had any issues with his security clearance because of breaking into the house, but I do know he's still with the same big defense company. At my parents' request, I've been working on putting their house into a trust. They want me to manage their affairs as they get older and keep the house safe for my sisters. I'm working with an attorney, and it's not done yet, but my folks have asked me to be the trustee and have also given me full power of attorney. The best part about the last few months is that my sisters and brothers-in-law have finally left us alone and have stayed away from the vacation home. My wife and I are truly happy to be back to our normal lives. In August, my attorney informed me that he'd received a letter from my middle brother-in-law. This was the first contact from any of my sisters or their husbands since they'd been arrested. It was a long letter, containing a sincere apology and a lot of information he thought I should know. The biggest revelation was that he and my sister were divorced, not just separated. He moved out and filed for divorce right after we made the settlement agreement. He and my middle sister kept it quiet until it was finalized. Their house sold in June, and she has since moved into an apartment. He explained that being arrested last year, along with my other brother-in-law, for breaking into the vacation house, could have cost him his job and ruined his career, which became a huge moment of clarity for him. He shared that the dynamic between the four of them, my sisters, him, and my oldest sister's husband, had become totally toxic. He said they are all borderline alcoholics or worse, and he needed to get away from that environment. He no longer speaks to my oldest sister or her husband. He also asked if he, my dad, and I could meet to have an extended conversation as there were things he wanted to discuss in person. Frankly, I wasn't enthusiastic about it, but my wife thought it was worth considering. I asked my dad if he was interested. He was, so I relayed a response to my now ex-brother-in-law through my attorney, and we met over lunch. We talked for over 2 hours. It was exhausting. My ex-brother-in-law looked better than I'd seen him in, well, forever. He's quit drinking, is in therapy, has lost a lot of weight, and looks fit. He was apologetic about all the nonsense he'd been involved in and apologized to my dad for hiding the divorce. He told us therapy is really helping him. He asked me if the $5,000 he'd sent covered all the damage to the vacation house. I told him it had, and thanked me for speaking with the county prosecutor. He mentioned he's seriously considering transferring to a new project that would have him living overseas for the next few years. He said he really needs to reset his life, but is trying to balance that against being present for his kids. Then, my ex-brother-in-law dropped what, for me, was quite the WTF moment. Apparently, my sisters have hated me since before I was born, but have always hidden it from the rest of us. They liked things better when it was just the two of them. He said that when they drank, which was whenever they were together, my sisters would often complain about me being the favorite child, how my parents gave me more opportunities than they had, and how my success was due to that favoritism. They believed I didn't deserve my accomplishments. None of this made any sense to me or my dad. All three of us went to the same public schools, worked part-time jobs, etc. My parents paid for 100% of their college, not mine, because I got a full scholarship. I was pretty shocked by this, but my dad was literally speechless. Eventually, Dad said he had no idea they felt that way as kids, and that he and Mom had never favored any of us. He's still struggling to process this. Personally, I'm embarrassed that I was clueless about it all my life, but it does explain a lot. My ex-brother-in-law warned us that my sisters and the remaining brother-in-law plan to put on a full-court press to alienate my parents from my wife and me. They also intend to withhold the grandkids from my parents as leverage. He said they're still 1,000% convinced that my parents are sitting on a ton of money, and they want some of it ASAP. They believe I'd stop my parents from giving them anything. That made my dad laugh because he and Mom simply don't have any real money other than their house, of course. My ex-brother-in-law also admitted that he and my middle sister had rented out the vacation house a total of 6 times over the years. He offered to pay me what they had made, but I declined and told him it was in the past. He also shared that my oldest sister and her husband had never declared the rental income to the IRS. He did, because he didn't want to get into trouble. Both my dad and I spoke with my ex-brother-in-law separately for a few minutes. I don't know what they discussed. I thanked him for his apology and for making things right financially. I also wished him well and told him I'd be open to talking again in the future. That said, I don't think it's likely to happen. I probably could have been more forgiving, but I think he appreciated my honesty about how all this has affected my wife and me. After my ex-brother-in-law left, I asked my dad if he, Mom, and I could sit down to talk about everything. I didn't mean immediately, but that's how he took it. He called Mom to let her know I was coming over, so I rolled with it. Mom was pretty hurt by my sister's plans to ruin her and Dad's relationship with my wife and me, and to use the grandkids as pawns. She cried a lot and wanted to confront them immediately, but Dad convinced her to hold off for now. Mom was also dumbfounded by the idea that I was supposedly the favorite child. She felt they were actually stricter with me since I had a hard curfew and my sisters didn't. To be honest, I barely remember that. It was 25 years ago. My middle sister eventually told our parents about her divorce. She's currently living off child support and her share of the home sale. Supposedly, she's trying to find a job. My parents have gone low contact with both sisters. I have no idea how permanent that will be, but Mom seems completely done with them for the foreseeable future. My parents have been spending a lot of time at the vacation house, and were up there for over a month at one point. My ex-brother-in-law found my Reddit posts. He's not thrilled about them, but feels they're mostly accurate, though obviously slanted toward my point of view. He disagreed with my characterization of him as boring, but added that he finds me boring too. I can live with that. Our worlds don't overlap much except for my sister. We got the trust set up for my parents' house, and I'm the trustee. All of this has been emotionally draining for me. I decided to start seeing a therapist again. I've seen one in the past for stress-related issues. I've been going for a while now, and it's definitely helpful. My therapist believes my decision to stay no contact with my siblings is healthy for now, but encourages me to keep an open mind for the future. This whole journey has been a whirlwind of anger, frustration, and ultimately, a strange kind of peace. I never expected things to get this out of control with my own family, but sometimes you have to draw a hard line to protect your sanity and your future. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to cut ties with family to protect your peace? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.